This episode of Settle the Score is sponsored by Sky Sports. Stream Sky Sports flexibly on Now. What you want, when you want, no fuss. Go to nowtv.com to start streaming Sky Sports today. Hello and welcome to Settle the Score. My name is Harry Durham. Let's look back on the biggest game of the weekend between Chelsea and Arsenal. Listen, Reece James was an absolute colossus in that midfield yesterday. What was Moises Caicedo thinking for that red card? Joining me this morning is Dave Chidgey from the Chelsea Fancast and Tom Canton from Gooner Talk. Dave, on reflection, 1-1 against the league leaders, do you think that was a fair result?
Yeah, probably. I mean, because we were down to 10 men and we played with 10 men for about 60 minutes to get a draw against, the league leaders, apparently the best team the world has ever seen, you got to take that. But it is disappointing because I thought we played so well and, Caicedo a bit hot-headed, shall we say, to get sent off. So that was disappointing. But, I'll take it.
We'll come on to Caicedo in a bit. But Tom, are you annoyed that you couldn't take advantage with that extra man at Stamford Bridge as well? I mean, there's been a lot of reaction off the back of this game. A lot of Arsenal saying it's, obviously you've gained a point, but it feels like 2 points lost at the same time.
Yeah. I think naturally when you go into a whole second half with a man advantage, the expectation is you don't then concede immediately, especially when you're in a position as strong as Arsenal's in the league right now and the quality that Arsenal have shown this season. I think that you have to look to try and take that advantage. And the fact that they didn't is a big frustration. I think they responded well to conceding, obviously, but they just didn't seem to have enough. And Chelsea really did impress me in the second half as well and how tenacious they were. There were aspects that frustrated me about both teams' performances, and particularly how the game was officiated as well, that I think really interrupted it from being a bit of a spectacle. But yeah, ultimately Arsenal will be disappointed.
Well, let's get into it then, because you both mentioned it and we need to speak about it. That's Moises Caicedo's red card. I'll get reaction from both of you. Dave, starting with you, obviously, with him being your player. Do you think it was soft? It's one of those situations where we know that studs are up. It's ill-timed. It's in the middle of the park. He shouldn't have probably been there doing that. But when it gets slowed down, and Anthony Taylor gave a yellow card from the get-go, and then obviously you've got VAR sort of, refereeing decisions for you and going back on things like that. Do you think in hindsight it was one of those where it looks even worse slowed down, but it's just an ill-timed challenge and you shouldn't have gotten a red card?
Yeah, I mean, when it happened at the time, I sit right up at the back in the corner, so I didn't have a particularly good view. So I just thought it was a 50-50. And I mean, at the time, I thought that because Caicedo was rolling around like he was dead, I thought maybe he had been fouled. But yeah, when you see it back, it was naughty, that's for sure. But I thought it was really interesting that Anthony Taylor gave a yellow card. So that tells me he didn't think it was a red until they re-refereed it and gave it as a red. And the other thing is, I think, I'm sure Tom would say this too. The one thing that supporters want from referees and decisions is consistency. And Bentancur did a challenge that was exactly the same on Reece James in the Spurs match a few weeks ago, and Bentancur got a yellow. So there's no consistency. But, looking back at it, when I got home, watched it on the TV, it was naughty. So, I can see why it was a red.
Tom, fair decision made, or are you sort of, on the fence a little bit? Obviously, it did happen to one of your players, but can you see how it can sort of go both ways?
I agree with David in terms of the consistency element, certainly in the Bentancur challenge. If you're going to send Caicedo off, I think you should probably send Bentancur off. What I would say is that I think it's a horrendous decision by Anthony Taylor, in my opinion, to give a yellow card in that moment, because it's so clear to me that that's a red card. It's forceful, it's dangerous, it's out of control, it's slightly higher than the ankle, studs are coming down. It ticks every single box that a referee needs. And the reason I feel that he doesn't, I feel that 10 years ago he gives a red card because VAR doesn't exist.
Yeah.
VAR exists these days, and referees lean on the existence of VAR to correct potential mistakes. So if they don't really want to give the big call in this game being a red card, it's like they give the yellow, or they don't give the penalty in certain other situations, hoping that if they've made an error, VAR will see it. The problem with that is that, particularly with penalties, the threshold for penalties being given by VAR is so high that if a referee is leaning on the VAR to make that call for them, it often won't, because it will go with the referee's on-field decision. So I think it's a massive error by Anthony Taylor not to give the red card on field. And actually, in that moment, you should allow the VAR to decide if it's not a red card rather than the VAR deciding that it is a red card in those moments.
Dave, you a bit worried about Chelsea's disciplinary record? It's,
Yeah.
what, 4 red cards since the start of the season, and we've not even made it until Christmas yet.
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's clearly an issue, isn't it? I mean, you could go back and look at each of them and say, well, some of them were a bit dodgy and some of them weren't, you know. But yeah, you've got to keep. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, we were playing really, really well. I'd say we were dominating until Caicedo got sent off. So, you know, being there, the buoyant mood that all the supporters had, it did dip because of that. Because you think, well, how are we going to beat Arsenal with 10 men? You know, so you need to keep your players on the pitch. However, having said that, you know, previously when we've lost a man, Maresca's just lost the plot completely, and you know, in a sense, by doing nothing or making changes too quickly, he's contributed to it. But yesterday, I thought they dealt with it really well. You know, he didn't bring on any subs. He just slightly tweaked the structure. You know, Reece was just brilliant in midfield from then on, and we did really well. So that was encouraging. But you know, you've got to keep 11 players on the pitch.
It's one of those funny things, and you mentioned Reece James there as well. Everyone thought it was going to be the battle of Moises Caicedo versus Declan Rice. Tom, you as a opposing fan, just how scary, how lethal was Reece James in that midfield yesterday? Because it seemed like he got everything right if it was cleaning up and also set pieces and also just whipping the ball around the park at the same time as well.
Yeah, it was a captain's performance. There's no doubt about that. And I was actually, you know, when the lineups came out, I was trying to, you know, put together how the team was going to set up. And obviously, we know that Gusto and James have kind of interchanged at times, and that creates a level of unpredictability that Arsenal, I think, struggled with to a degree. I think Arsenal have been so good at kind of catching teams off guard with how Calafiori operates, for example, that when they come up against another team that have got, you know, plenty of world-class talent that also then operate in a way tactically that's designed to surprise you, that creates a new element for Arsenal. I do think overall that the Arsenal feel like they're getting the most criticism after this game of the two teams. And I can understand why on the surface that's the case. You know, it's an opportunity to go to the team that sat second in the table before the weekend began and get a really big result, especially when Chelsea have gone down to 10 men. I look at this game in reflection, and I think you can split it into the two teams. I think from an Arsenal point of view, you can be really disappointed with the result, absolutely. I think there are contexts as well that we haven't yet talked about as to maybe why Arsenal weren't as on the ball as they have been against Bayern and, say, Tottenham the week before. But equally, I think if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be utterly gutted with this. I really think I'd be totally gutted because I think this was a great opportunity for Chelsea against an Arsenal team that without Gabriel and Saliba for only the second time in more than 3 years, a team that doesn't have a natural centre forward, that has obviously got all of the energy and momentum from that Barcelona game. This was such an opportunity for Chelsea to close the gap on Arsenal, and they failed to do that. And I think that Arsenal, in the end, will probably come away like City have in previous seasons where they've won the title with a draw at Liverpool or a draw at other tough grounds they've gone to and gone on to win the league. And I hope that, obviously, for obvious reasons, why Arsenal go on and do that. I just think this was a massive missed opportunity for both teams. And I don't think the Chelsea element is being talked about as much as maybe the Arsenal one because of the red card in the game.
Yeah. Can I come back on that, Harry?
Yeah, absolutely. Take it away.
I get what Tom's saying. And, you know, look, we haven't beaten you at home for a long time. So, yeah, you know, naturally disappointed and going a goal up. And yeah, it was a great opportunity. But there's a wider context around this, I think, Tom. And that is that, you know, we've had a really tough 3 years. You know, the club's been taken over. The guts have been ripped out of it. That whole kind of Roman Abramovich era mentality has been absolutely, you know, just destroyed. So from where we've been recently to come and play against a very, very good team, and nobody denies Arsenal are a superb team, but to come out there and go toe to toe with you and show that fight and aggression and no little skill as well. So, yeah, I'm disappointed we didn't win. I desperately wanted to beat Arsenal. Of course I did. But we know very few of us consider that we're really in the title race. This is not like a Chelsea Arsenal from, you know, 2010 or whatever. You know, so we saw it as a real statement as to where we're going, if you like, that we can go, you know, that we can play like that against Arsenal, who were supposed to be the best team in the league. So I went home actually really proud of the team and the effort that they put in, and thinking, well, we're kind of getting back to where we should be, you know. So yes, I get what you're saying about, you know, disappointed with the lost opportunity, but there's a lot more to it than that, I think.
Do you think teams have seen, Tom, that Arsenal can be get at? I know you've got obviously Saliba and Gabriel out at the moment. I'm not saying the Mosquera isn't up to standard, because he's an unbelievable centre half. But can you see yourself sort of dropping points over this festive period?
I think that if you have lost those players, the idea, I mean, we talked about it when Gabriel got injured. I mean, the likelihood was when Gabriel got injured, and then obviously Saliba in this game, but Gabriel in particular, is that you cannot replace players of that quality no matter how much you spend in a market, because there are certain players in squads, in teams that are of a certain standard that no matter how much you spend on your team, when they're out, the replacement that comes in is not of that same level. And very rarely can you find players that are going to be of that level to replace them. So, yeah, the likelihood is that we were going to drop, drop points over the festive period. And I think that hopefully that this is the game that we do drop the points in, and that we can move forward from here. I think from an Arsenal rotation point of view, I think that you saw a tired Arsenal on Sunday. And I think that you saw that as a result of the Bayern and Spurs games. And I think that there is an element that Mikel Arteta needs to take a step back and reflect on the fact that against Spurs, you went 4-1 up in the 74th minute, used one substitute until the 88th minute. You left an unused substitute on the bench before playing Bayern on Wednesday. I think that he has to look at the squad that he's got and maybe be a bit more proactive in rotation and changes and rest, so that when you've got 3 fixtures of such difficulty in such a short space of time, that you do rest players. Like Declan Rice has played 90 minutes across all 3 of these games. He didn't have to. At 4-1 up against Spurs, you could have brought Norgard on and give Rice 15 minutes rest. You could have brought him off at the end of the game against Bayern, perhaps with 2-goal buffer. I just feel as though there is an element that we have this squad. Is it being utilised enough so that we can go through these difficult periods with players missing and still get the maximum potential out of this team? That's the only real nitpick I've got at the moment for Arsenal.
Well, you look at the schedule, and obviously it's the 1st of December right now. Your next game, obviously, on Wednesday, we've got Premier League fixtures coming up in midweek. Arsenal versus Brentford. And then on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff is going to be Aston Villa. Arsenal going away to Villa Park. Wednesday, the 10th, is going to be Club Brugge versus Arsenal. So Arsenal over in Belgium. And then Saturday, the 13th, is going to be Arsenal 8 o'clock kickoff against Wolves. 4 games in the space of 10 days, which is, we all say a thing or two about the schedule, but at the same time, that's quite hefty if you look at obviously the week that Arsenal have just had as well. And Chelsea have got the same situation. They've still got to go away to Bournemouth, away to Leeds, and away to Atalanta as well, just giving a bit of context to how busy that festive period is. Dave, to finish us off there, mate, I'm going to let you wax lyrical about Reece James. How about that? Because we got Tom's opinion. I would like to hear from you, the great man, your captain, who has been so unlucky, vast majority of his career being on the treatment table and being out of football. Now seems like a really special period for Reece James at the moment, where his fitness is where it needs to be, and he's also backing it up on the pitch at the same time as well. It's a real joy to see.
Yeah, I mean, he was brilliant yesterday. I mean, he played like a man possessed. We've often said this about Kante, that there were 2 Kantes, and Caicedo's been in the same mould, but James was everywhere yesterday. I mean, it's so pleasing to see, because, I mean, when he broke up on the scene, about 3 or 4 years ago, it was obvious that he was a world-class talent. And then he's had all of these troubles with injuries, and you wondered whether he'd ever get back to being his best. And now, I mean, he's playing in midfield, which a lot of us scratch our heads out because he's such a great right back, but he's clearly very good at it. And I think the thing that pleases me most, actually, because he's been handed the captaincy, and he's not what you would call a very vocal leader or a big personality in the mold of somebody like Tony Adams or John Terry, for example. But he's quietly showing real leadership, certainly by example. But you can see that he's really growing into the role as a leader on that pitch. So add that to what is already a world-class talent, and you've got some hell of a player there. So it's just so pleasing to see.
Lads, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. And if I don't speak to you, have a good Christmas as well.
Yeah, you too.
This episode of Settle the Score is sponsored by Sky Sports. Stream Sky Sports flexibly on Now. What you want, when you want, no fuss. Go to nowtv.com to start streaming Sky Sports today.